O sun behind all suns, O soul within all souls, grant us the grace of the dawn's glory. Grant us the strength of the sun's rays, that we may be well in our own soul and part of this world's healing this day, that we may be well in our own soul and part of the world's healing this day. Amen.
Thank you, Carol. I should mention as we launch into our program today that we're going to be ending at about 11:45 because there's a luncheon, women's luncheon at 12. Anyone who might like to go, we're going to make sure you have a chance to get there on time. Also, as we talk about care and calling and our own individual experiences in care and calling, we need to remember there's a confidentiality about who our care receivers are. They may not want us talking about them by name. So as you talk about your experiences, if you could not use that person's name, I think it's a good thing to honor that confidentiality. Is that okay? For a good guideline. Hello, Mary, welcome. We begin with a celebration of everything that care and calling is doing, and especially has been doing in the last 19 or so months. So we just want to celebrate all that this ministry is and does. Care and calling is 31 trained and commissioned ministers. 6 leaders, I just named them, including, let's see, yeah, I think I named them all. 2 coordinators, that would be Dr. Carol Jansen and myself. 2 counselors, Elsa and Julie Eldring. And right now, as of today, 74 people on our care list. And that includes 25 who have lost loved ones in the last 12 months. That's kind of a distinct category. It's also always rotating in and out as those 12 months continue to rotate. We give thanks for Ann Walker's consistent and faithful outreach with letters, with cards to our out-of-state people. She sends holiday cards, even the high holidays such as Halloween and so forth. Maybe even Groundhog's Day, I don't know.
I haven't found that card.
Okay. To all of our out-of-state people. And I think we have about a dozen out-of-state people on our care list. A request has come that we introduce ourselves. I'm Pastor Jeffrey Phillips, Associate Pastor with the Congregational Church. And let's go with the people on the screen first. Neva?
Amiiba Egan, nice to see. And I'm glad you suggested that, Lois Eve, because you all look about as big as ants to me on my screen and are masked. So I have no idea who else is there besides Carol and Jeffrey. So this is
good idea. Okay, thanks. And Cindy?
Yes, Cindy Pinkerton, and I agree, Neva. It's good to get a view of everybody there. Yeah.
Good morning, Nancy Maislon.
And Verna, can you introduce yourself, please?
I'm Verna Watkins, and I live in Chicago. I'm interested in the care and calling ministry and also being a member at this church.
Good. I missed the last thing you said, Verna.
Also want to participate in being a member at Bethel Congregational Church.
Oh, we can arrange for that. Mary?
Mary Reynolds, Jane Dowding, Sally Sproul, Mary Boyer, Peggy Redding, Ann Walper, Diane Eller, Lois Anderson,
And Carol Jansen.
Okay, so in addition to Ann's good ministry of sending cards, Mary Reynolds assists with the meal ministry. Whenever I or any of you hear about anybody who might need a meal, or even if you think they might need a meal, let Mary or me know. And then Mary sets up the meal train, which is a link to an online page. And then I send it out through the messenger and through our Karen Calling update list. Thank you, Mary, for doing that. Transportation Ministry is Go-Go Grandparent. We try to advertise that from time to time. There are flyers on the table about that. Brad McLean heads up the Jobs Ministry. If we ever know of anybody in the congregation who needs a little support, guidance, encouragement, Brad and his team of about 6 people who are career professionals will help people just think about, well, what do you want to accomplish in terms of your career? How might you get there? Interviewing skills, resume updating skills, networking skills, all that stuff. That's also part of Karen Calling. Carol, can you tell a little bit about The Doctor Is In?
Right, I offer services to anyone who needs it. You know, for one time only, who is in a difficult situation that they, whether it's with themselves or with a child, someone in the family, whatever. And spend time with them and really help them try to identify what may be needed in terms of resources, provided with resources.
And all these things have been in the messenger from time to time. The Poinsettia Party is coming up soon on December 12th. Lily's at Easter. If and when we have Easter in the sanctuary, I think we will in April of 2022. We distribute the lilies to people on our care list. Ann Walper, again, doing double, triple duty, is organizing the flower ministry. That's the delivery of flowers that have been present in worship to people on our care list. Thank you again, Ann.
She's right on top of it. Thank you for everybody who does it. Who delivers them.
I suppose you could use some more people.
Please, yes,
Okay.
especially in the next year.
All right.
Is there another ministry that you haven't mentioned?
How
Yes,
good.
I was
Well,
thinking of, yes, Lois Eve, I know, sends cards to people who have lost people, and I found those personally extremely meaningful.
Lucy, my apologies.
I think so.
Yes. Sorry, I should have had someone look at
Why
this.
am I here?
Lucy sends greetings and sympathy cards to people on the 6-month and 12-month anniversary of a loss. And this is a very important ministry. And she and I work each month. Hello, Sally. On about the 20th of each month, I send Lois Eve the list of people for the next month's batch of cards, indicating who they are, who's been lost, and also whether it's the 6-month or the 12-month observance of that loss. Thank you again, Lois Eve. I'm sorry again for omitting that. During the pandemic, we have called or sent cards to 400 WCC households. Many of you have been involved in that, and we appreciate your participation in that. It's just another way of saying that your church family cares about you. And we've also had continuing education events from time to time. Last week, we had a therapist help people think about if they have parents who need more and more help, how can they take care of themselves so they can be more fully present and helpful to their parents? We had that last week program. So caring calling is church members caring for church members. If you want to put it succinctly. That's God's love in action, not just talk, but action. And it's caring for one another. Caring calling is it's inevitably not Carol and me or the leaders. It's all the recipients and it's all the givers of care. It's everybody, especially you, whoever you are. You and you and you and you and you. And so we just want to say thank you to everybody. I'd like to share a clip from Mel Schwartz's memorial service a week ago Saturday. because there's a powerful care and calling connection there that demonstrates the importance of this ministry.
What will we talk about? That was the question on my mind as I made my way to visit Mel for the first time. He was in the hospital for a brief stay, and we had just been paired as part of Winnetka Congregational Church's care and calling ministry. I knew Mel from Sunday morning spiritual enrichment programs and from the men's barbecues, but we didn't really know each other very well. Our ages didn't quite line up, and I didn't know if we shared any hobbies. As I drove to the hospital, I wondered, what will we talk about? When I left Mel's room, about 90 minutes later, I was no longer worried about what we were going to talk about. Mel was curious about so many things, and he was happy to share what he had discovered. He also had delightful stories. As our visits moved beyond the hospital to phone calls and meetings at his house, we never lacked for conversation topics. As the elder in our pair, Mel had preceded me into the workforce. He had experienced the end of some technologies and the emergence of others. We could compare experiences and share challenges faced and solved. While our careers were very different, we connected over diverse perspectives on common problems, such as incorporating computers and data sciences into organizations. I sense that Mel enjoyed sharing his experiences, very much the teacher, and I always enjoyed the lessons. One thing Mel and I shared in common was the enjoyment of car trips. I travel the country fishing and hiking and visiting family and friends. Mel was interested in the details, the communities I'd visited, the roads I'd traveled, and what I'd seen along the way. His travel stories were mostly focused on trips closer to home, often with Mary Elaine and Chris. Those stories still included much common ground. We spoke of changing roads, transformed communities, and the changes wrought by the expansion of suburbia into the countrysides that he had visited in his youth. Mary Elaine and Chris, he confessed that he may have been a little more into those driving excursions than you were. It's a lament I appreciated, having tortured my own children. We also talked a lot about our nation. We shared a concern for the current political discourse and the divisions in the country. He had a perspective on these times informed by the tumult of the 1960s. I appreciated his insights into the similarities and the differences and the role that the changing media landscape plays. I found Mel a keen observer of our current culture and political environment. The pandemic interrupted our in-person visits. Our phone calls were never as wide-ranging as they were when we were together. But at times, they were deeper. Topics could be closer to the heart, sometimes joyful, sometimes painful. Cathartic for one, understood and appreciated by the other. In time, I realized that my connection to Mel had grown well beyond a care and calling ministry relationship. I had a friend, an older brother. No longer was the question, what are we going to talk about? That old question had been replaced by a new thought. What a gift. Thank you, Mel.
when Steve offered those words a week ago Saturday, I thought, I need to share that with the group on the 16th to show the kind of mutual bonding that happens through these relationships and how meaningful they are to both parties. I'd like to give any of you a chance to reflect on some ways that your ministry to others in care and calling, what that has meant to you and how it has deepened your own joy of being a human being, a Christian, a member of our church. What have some of these connections meant to you? And people at home, you can speak up too. If you would like to speak, just unmute yourself and speak up. Yes, Peggy?
I'll start. Both of my people happen to now live out of town, far out of town, so that we can't visit in person. But I talk to them on the telephone, and I think it's very meaningful to them. It certainly is to me. They open up a lot about, you know, how they're feeling and what it's like to be alone, and they really wish they were still here, and they really miss our church, which I love to hear that part. I think it's good that they miss our church. Anyway, I've been doing it for quite a long time now, and I've enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed it. And I think it's meaningful to both of them as well.
Thank you for your ministry. Mary?
Well, I have sort of two parts to what I'd like to say. The person that I visit is a Presbyterian home. And it's someone that I had known before. And so we had a little relationship. Well, we had more, I guess, than a little relationship. I hadn't seen her since January of 2020. And she has some memory loss issues. So when I went a week ago yesterday to see her for the first time in almost 2 years, I was a little bit like Steve, like, is she going to remember me? What's going to happen? And when I walked into her room, she was sitting up and watching TV. And when I walked in, I knew she immediately recognized me, even though I had my mask on. And she cried because she was so happy to see me. And so did I. Anyway, she didn't have a mask on. And she said, take your mask off, take your mask off. And I said, well, do you think they'll arrest me? Is the health department going to come in here? She said, no, take your mask off. So anyway, we had a very nice visit. She was a bit confused, but she chattered on and back and forth. I spent about 20 minutes with her, which was, I could tell she was getting tired and it was time for me to leave. So anyway, and I said I would be back regularly. And so that was, I always feel that when I go to visit her, that I get a little more out of it than she does. But I don't think that there have been a lot of visitors over there. I mean, obviously. And so that was a very fulfilling. The other part of what I want to say is that I have been the recipient of care and calling, and particularly the meal train and so forth, and Lois Eve's card and so forth. And it does, I mean, it really does make a difference to the family and to the recipients. I mean, I can tell you that. And a number of you were involved in that, and it means a lot.
Thanks for your ministry.
I'd like to underscore that. I wonder when I get the list from Jeffrey, this is now 2 years I've been doing this. I'd like to say, I always make copies and keep them of what I have written and sent. So if there is ever a reason for any of the people who are related to those I have sent to, who for some reason might wish to complain or contact or underscore or something, I have everything I've ever written. And I think that's both for my security and for anybody's information who maybe something got lost in the mail and they hear that, you know, so-and-so got a note appreciating the loss. We didn't. Well, yes, you did. I have backup, but I really do appreciate, since I never know, since I don't know most of these people, what I'm going to say that is both original and pertinent on this small card. I have only a limited space. As Cicero said a couple of thousand years ago, if I had more time, I would be more brief. Yeah. I really appreciate it, and there have been 3 occasions that sit in my mind now in which people have come up to me in church and personally thanked me. And most recently, the one that I appreciated the most was taking the time to say why they appreciated it. She said, we get lots of response at the time of our loved one's death. But 6 months, a year later, you're the only one. And that really struck me because I know from personal experience on many occasions, you don't really start mourning until occasions happen when everybody else has put away the black. And you realize through some combination of events how much you really are starting to mourn. And that can happen a half a year or a year later.
Or many years later.
Yeah, there's something coalesced and suddenly you realize how vacant that spot in your life is. So apparently these 6 month, 1 year things are meeting a need. But it was Jeffrey's idea to start this program. So I'm grateful that I'm getting response, and do let me know if you hear any complaints, because I want to know.
So 2 years on, I have not heard any complaints yet,
Oh,
but I've heard a lot of gratitude.
thank you.
And you have just articulated exactly why it's a unique and much needed ministry. So we thank you.
I might add to that also that a lot of us sent out letters to people during the pandemic. And I had the experience of 2 of the letters I sent out. I had people write letters back to me. One of whom, a person who was not even affiliated with the church, but there was some kind of a connection, wrote back to me and said, it was the best thing that happened to her that entire day, was to walk home and open up that note card. And another one was a very, very, very appreciative of what a difference it made in her life, that I continue to reach out.
In that same vein, I wanted to share something that happened during the pandemic based on the calls. I volunteered to make calls, and one snowy, maybe it was a gloomy Saturday afternoon, I started making my calls, and no one was home, no one was home, no one was home. And one of my calls was to a church member, alleged church member in Connecticut. And a woman answered the telephone, and I introduced myself, and I told her why I was calling, and she was quiet, and she said, I paraphrase what she said, that the call had come at exactly the right time because she was feeling very alone in Connecticut. Even though her daughter lived nearby, she was isolated, as many of us were, from her daughter and grandchildren. and her husband. She'd moved to Connecticut about 15 years ago because her husband had passed and was buried in the churchyard here. And she said, I'm missing him this afternoon, and I'm wondering if everything's okay in the churchyard. And I said, I live a half a block from there, 2-minute walk. I'll go over and check. And there was still snow in the churchyard, and it took me, and I had his name, and it was an experience. And she and I had a lovely talk, and she talked about what it was like when she lived here and what the church was like. And she'd been gone for a long time. She didn't know she was continued to be a member. She said that she hadn't heard anything for a long time from the church. And so I hung up the phone and I contacted Jeffrey. It started snowing and I contacted Jeffrey, and Jeffrey said he had a map of the church garden. That if I needed help finding it, that he and I would go out and trudge around and find it. The next week I just came over on my own and I looked and I looked and I looked and I looked, and I thought, maybe she was confused, maybe, or I'll have to talk to Jeffrey. And as I was leaving, out of the corner of my eye, I saw his name. And so I took a picture and I took a video. It was, the birds were singing, and I sent it to her because she'd given me her email, and I sent it to her by email, and then I tried calling her a couple of times and there's been no answer. But for me to be able to do that and to make that connection, was, it highlighted the pandemic and what it was coming to, what people were feeling. Now they're lost in that. And those connections are unresolved, I think. I think the calls were a very good idea.
Yeah, it's amazing how all of that kind of came together at the right time.
Thank you for your ministry. Any other uplifting stories or important stories to share about these connections that happen?
Well, I think sometimes it's hard to reach out to people because they don't answer the phone, and then we can't proceed. So that's been a frustration. But man, once you do make a connection, when you talk to them,
I can't hear you, Sam.
when you talk to them and when you go see them, it's very uplifting. You just feel really great afterwards.
So in a moment, we're going to hear from one of our members who has persisted and found ways to make that connection despite the pandemic and despite difficulty in even using the telephone on the part of the care receiver and so on. But any other stories of positive connections that have been made through care and calling anyone wants to share?
Did you want to hear about prayer ministry?
Yes, thank you, Nancy. Nancy helps organize our prayer ministry at church, which meets every Monday, 3:30 to 4. And this year, we're admitting Nancy Karstedt here. This year, the prayer ministry got brand new cards. So in addition to praying for people, they send out cards. And Nancy, you can go ahead and screen share. Hi, Nancy Karstedt, welcome.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I need to,
And here.
Nancy, while you're screen sharing, do you need me? I don't think I need to screen share. I think you can screen share without my involvement. And I can't hear you now either. We've lost your volume.
He's not talking.
There you are.
I'm afraid I have something else that is covering up the place that I need to screen share. And try again.
Why don't you work on that? I wanted to comment that we need to remember everything in care and calling is done on behalf of the congregation. Yes, you are doing it, but you're doing it on behalf of the faith family. And that's a bigger responsibility. Yes, your hello is amplified by the hello of everybody in the church. Okay, Nancy, we can see that now.
I just wanted to say that we gather for about half an hour to 45 minutes
by Zoom every Monday afternoon. We have a devotional book that was selected long ago by Marla Mothershed and Joanne Miner. And we are still using it after about 15 years of gathering on Monday afternoons. And we've always sent out little notes to everyone whom we pray for. But with the new, kind of sense of having a presence, we were invited to make our own card rather than send out the church stationery, with a picture of the drawing of the church that we had used for so many years. And so JS designed these two beautiful cards for us. And then Patty Van Cleve helped us shepherd them through. And in addition to the note cards, which are bifold, we also have prayer cards that are just a flat card, so that people whom we think this is something where someone would want to have something by their bedside for a long period of time. And so we have 6 different cards with prayers of encouragement and comfort, and including one with the 23rd Psalm and one with the 100th Psalm. And so I just wanted to share this aspect of prayer ministry with you today.
But that would be Nancy Meisman, not Nancy Karsten.
Right, I was greeting Nancy Karstedt
I
a
see.
moment ago. Yeah, thank you,
Yes,
Nancy.
Meisman.
Yeah, anything else that you would like to share about prayer ministry? We meet by Zoom, by the way, not in person, or not hybrid either, but always on Zoom.
Well, I wondered if you wanted to share a little bit about our prayer ministry with Bethel Baptist Church.
Tell us about that.
Another aspect of prayer ministry is our connection with Bethel Baptist. And so I'm generally the one who speaks to our minister at Bethel Baptist. She is a retired pastor, but, and I'm not sure that she was actually at Bethel Baptist, but she's a member there now. And Pastor Blackfeld just throws her things when something comes up that is like, okay, well, Dolores, will you please take care of reconforming the usher team? Well, we just laughed and laughed about that one because I remember the usher team when we had to cross the street with children who sometimes weren't thinking about the fact that, oh, we need a little bit more help here. At any rate, so we laughed and laughed about the reconforming the usher team. And then another one of Dolores's, just, okay, Pastor Blackfeld threw this at her, is chatting with me about the concerns of both of our churches every other week or so. And what I want to say about Dolores is that she has scripture memorized. And so if you read in the prayer list that a quotation from scripture, that's something that just in our conversation came right out of Dolores without her even having to, occasionally used to say, well, I just want to double check and make sure that's right in her Bible. And we never talk about politics. Occasionally we talk about race. And one thing that she said to me once was, what did I ever do? And it just makes you pause as you think. But her life has been diminished by attitudes of other people towards her. But she is a woman of deep and gracious faith. And so that diminishment is not in any way what she lives out of. she lives out of knowing that she is a child of God.
Thank you, Nancy.
You're welcome.
Any other stories that need to be shared? Good stories. Yes,
I'll
Sally?
mention something that has to do with the prayer ministry that Nancy just talked about. Several years ago, a Winnetka family, they're very good family friends of ours, had a son who died at the age of 31. It was beyond tragic and very sudden. And I guess I filled out one of those cue cards. But anyway, the prayer ministry wrote the family a letter. And I heard about this. They're not members of our congregation, and they have a somewhat different faith tradition, but it meant so much that our church reached out to another family in our community. I
That's a
just
great
wanna share that.
testimony. Nancy, had you heard that story?
It might have, maybe it was, I don't quite remember how many years ago this young man died. I mean, it was probably within 5 years. So maybe have been different people who were on the ministry. I'm not sharing a name.
No.
So,
Well, this is wonderful.
And it comes to mind.
so I'm just mentioning that because greater outreach into the community is always a good thing, and this was a particular opportunity that was greatly appreciated.
Oh,
We don't do Karen calling so as to get publicity and build our church. However, when people hear that that's a church where members care for each other, it can only be a good thing. It's a reflection of the character of our congregation, I hope. And maybe encouragement to people who belong to other congregations who might say, oh, maybe we should do something like that in our church too.
I just wanted you all and Nancy to know that it really, really meant something.
Thank you.
I have a story to tell. Many, many years ago, when I first started doing care and calling, I went and I didn't know anything about care and calling, didn't have any training at all, or whatever. But I went to visit. I had 2 elderly women that were actually very close to my neighborhood, and one of them, my son, she loved having me come because my son used to sell Christmas wreaths to her. He would go and put them up and so on and so forth. So he was, in her eyes, he was very special. And one day I went to see one of these women, and she asked me how I was, and it had been just after my mother died. And I said, well, I'm fine, but I'm feeling very sad because my mom just died and I was very close to her, and it's just been very difficult. And do you know what she said to me? She stood up and she said, I'll be your mom, and threw her arms around me. So every time I visited those women, I felt like I got more out of it than I ever gave to them. But it was just, I will never forget it, never forget it. And so I did feel like I had a mom then when I went to visit her.
I'd like to shift gears a little bit and turn it over to Amiiba Egan, who's going to share some successes that she's had in finding ways and means of connecting with her care and calling recipient through thick and thin and all kinds of challenges and difficulties. So that can be an encouragement to us, just as Sally Willie was saying a moment ago, that if you do persevere and make the connection, it's well worth it. But you got to do the persevering. Neva, what do you have for us?
Let's see. I really don't even consider this much of a success story, but just not giving up. So I visit, or I connect with two very people in different circumstances. And the more challenging person in the sense of making contact is someone who has memory issues and is not technologically savvy. And so really my method is persistence. And when I was in the care and calling training, I think I was told, try to make contact once every season, 4 times a year, or at least something like that. And so what I do is to at least call every month in the hope of actually, excuse me, making contact at least that often. But she often is not home, which I consider a good thing if she's out in her community and I think with other people. Sometimes she goes and reads somewhere else, sometimes outside. But I call, I leave messages. When I don't get a response a couple of times in a row, sometimes I start to worry, is there something going on with her, even though she lives in a community where I know someone will notice and she'll be attended to. But so in that case, I have the phone numbers of both of her children and I call them and leave messages. And I always leave who I am and my contact information. And I don't ever hear back from them, but somehow they get through to her and then she calls me. And it was wonderful after so many months of not seeing each other to be able to go this spring and summer, I think 2 or 3 times, and see her in person. That really was great to reconnect. And this is someone who, because of her memory issues, and I'm sorry for the frog in my throat, I don't know what that is. It's just appeared this moment, or just as I'm talking. I don't think she understands a lot of the time that I am her care and calling person. We know each other from another connection, and I think she just thinks I call and visit out of friendship from that. And sometimes she'll call me, it's a book group, so sometimes she'll call me about that. But that doesn't matter. We just talk and chat, and she's always lovely and always seems happy to update me on how she is doing and to hear about how I'm doing. And she willingly talks about how hard it is for her that she can no longer drive. She has not managed to use Go-Go Grandparent, although we've talked about that a lot. And she would really like to stay in touch with people, but since she doesn't use email or texting or even really her cell phone, that's been, talk about how hard that is for her, and she suffered a big loss. So, and then the other person that I visit with is very tech savvy, and so I can use text to supplement phone calls with her. And a lot of times we use that texting for just checking in. I check in with her and she can respond, and scheduling phone calls. When we've been able to visit. So, that's all I can think of at the moment.
Well, thank you, Neva. That's encouraging. And thank you for your ministry. Any questions for Neva about her experiences? It's awesome.
I think that is a challenge with people who have dementia, being able to use any kind of technology. I know from my own experience with my sister-in-law, she now does not even answer the phone. I don't think she knows how to use the phone. She doesn't call me. She can't. I just don't think she knows how to use the phone. So that's a challenge for us. How do we go about doing that? And I think often with some of the things we've done, is Mary just went to visit. I think Neva just went to visit, just
Yeah.
go and
Yeah,
see.
just
I
go.
mean, my
Just go.
person does not know how to use the phone.
Yeah, sometimes you gotta just go.
So, and I know that Neva, that one experience that she had, we see the notes that everybody sends, which is very powerful. Sometimes I just sit and cry when I read those notes. They're so powerful. But Neva went to take that woman that she talked about with dementia for a walk and had the most beautiful time with her walking out, and the woman just loved being outside and enjoying the garden and having a partner with her and so on and so forth. So I think just being creative about what you're going to do. But other people have taken people to lunch. One of our caring calling ministers has taken her, wanted to, I'm speaking about you, Jane. One of her caring calling people wanted to make dinner for somebody. So Jane went over and helped her prepare this dinner that she wanted to have when she wanted to have somebody over. And that was very, very meaningful to her, because that was something this is the person I'm also in contact with, and had talked to me already about wanting to reach out. She'd been kind of alone and wanting to reach out to somebody else and ask me, what did I think? And I said, I think you should really try to do that. But I think she's getting to the point where she needed some other assistance, at least some moral support in doing that. And Jane, that made that happen. And Jane, that was so powerful for her to do that. I think it was very confidence building and uplifting to have her have that
And
experience.
confidence building is a really big thing, and I have just learned that she is doing that again without my help this time. So that's,
But that gave her the boost
The
to
boost.
make
Yeah.
the next step, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many powerful stories about things, different creative things that people are doing. Really remarkable.
Carol's comment reminds me of something I learned many years ago when I was first doing care and calling. I think it was long ago enough that Warren Wiggins was doing it. Some of you may or may not remember him, but one of the things he talked about was how when you call on someone, and he wasn't talking about, bless Jane, cooking and bringing food, but whether it's their own house or their own apartment, in a facility, you are a guest, they are the host. And he talked about how, in times maybe earlier in their lives, when they were more active, they did entertain, they were hosts. And they still want to be in that role. And then actually about the first couple I ever called on were neighbors, friends of my mother's actually. Then sadly she died, but her husband lived on. And he very much was the host in the house when you'd come over and visit. I mean, he took it to a greater level. He started taking us out for dinner. My kids started going over, calling on him. And so that was sort of a unique situation, but it's that same concept of being host, which would give you confidence and kind of feel like, this was the way my life was when I could be more active.
And give them a chance to do something for you, right? Because
Right.
I think that's really, really.
we all need that giving and receiving.
Exactly.
that's a pretty powerful message, I thought, in Steve's words
Mhm.
at Nell's service.
That there was a mutuality in the
That there's
relationship.
a lot of letting the person we call on be the host.
Or certainly setting the terms of the visit, right? The length, the place, the topics, all that, yeah.
I'm just thinking about that woman who said she would be my mother. I mean, that was again, the same kind of thing, being able to once again do something that she was very familiar with doing.
We're doing very well with time. I did have another PowerPoint, yay! With some best practices for Karen Calling? Would that Yes.
Jeffrey,
Yes, Neva?
Jeffrey, could I say something?
Please.
I think that that's something that this group could, what we've been talking about. I think the person, especially the older person that I visit, the best gift I could ever give to her is if I could find some way that she could give to others. During the times when she is cognizant of who I am and my role vis-a-vis her, she's appreciative, but I think she feels sad too, because she wants to be doing this for others. And I truly think that the best thing I could ever do for her is if I could find some way that she could give to other people. So I don't know, just, I love these examples of like Jane cooking with someone so that she could give, or he or she could give to someone. And I think maybe we could look for those and collect those and share those in the future, because I bet this person I see is not alone in wishing that she could be in the role that I'm in, because she's such a caring and compassionate person.
Actually, Neva, we did do that. We did do that with some of our Karen Calling people. We asked them to make phone calls.
Yeah, good.
They were making all the phone calls, and I think that was an important thing for them to be able to do. But that's a really great point.
Well, and I once, Jeffrey and Carol know this, but one time when I was visiting her in her facility, as I was putting in the name of the person that I was visiting, just by chance, another church member's name came up because she was very close in the alphabet to the person I was visiting. And she was there temporarily, and I hadn't known she was still there. So after I finished my visit with my person, I asked the people there if I could go visit the other person, and managed to do that. Which was wonderful. But I'm just thinking, I wonder, I just thought of this morning. I wonder if the person that I regularly visit and I could go visit some of the other people there, if that would, I don't know, it's just a thought. Question.
Sounds like a good idea. Great ideas. Before doing a best practice, since we have time, I'd like to read something that Paulette Brown gave me before she left Illinois. Paulette is one of those former leaders of Karen Calling. You know, this program's been around a long time. Warren Wiggins, God bless his soul. Warren's a friend of mine. So a lot of clergy, a lot of lay people have been involved in building this over the years. Paulette's one of them.
Well, I'm thinking so many of the people that we're calling on now, we're probably Karen Calling.
Yes.
We're actively involved in Karen Calling.
That's right. Paulette was one of them, yeah. And so before Paulette left, she found a type 12 points of what it's like, what kind of visit is recommended by a care receiver. The care receiver was Beth Shalupa, who was for many years the organist.
Music director.
Music director.
I think.
Organist, something,
Yeah.
music
Yeah.
related at Winnetka Congregational Church.
Yeah.
And she's passed away, and this is dated October 1990, only 31 years ago. Let me read it real quick, because that perspective of the care receiver that's valuable. Number one, be natural. See a human being with an illness, not an illness that has swallowed up the human being. Two, be sensitive and use common sense just as one human being to another. Three, know something about the person you're calling on. Four, know something about the illness or incapacity of the person. Jeffrey speaking here, I think sometimes that's possible, sometimes it's not possible. Five, don't be morbidly curious about the illness. It reminds one too much of the gaper's block at an accident. But if the person wants to talk about the problem, be a good listener. Number six, it's nice if you can go with one small thing to give. I remember well when I was in the hospital and feeling real down, a friend brought me a picture cut out of a magazine and mounted on a piece of white cardboard. The picture was of a house and flower garden in the country with a woman picking flowers who I fancied from a distance looked like me. A single rose or flower from one's garden in the summertime in a dime store vase is nice, or music programs that can be left and thrown away. 7, I like to be read to. This is such a restful way to spend the time. 8, leave while the patient sincerely still hates to see you go. Number 9, be indulgent, let them talk. And don't take any of their grumping personally. There are others who are better than I am at feeling lousy. When I'm feeling ill and down, my grand philosophies of better days desert me. I don't want to be nice or smile or anything. At a time like this, I want the caller to be quiet, kind, and gentle. Number 10, when I'm better, it is just good to know that someone cares enough to be there. 11, be sensitive to their degree of discomfort. If the illness is life-threatening, or chronic or passing? No matter what it is, the person is still a child of God, struggling to make sense out of what is happening. It is a lonely affair, and you can't be sick for them. And number 12, don't force the spiritual side of your visit. Your presence is an act of grace in itself. Now, if you feel it's appropriate, as Jeffrey speaking here, if you think it's appropriate to pray with a person, something you're comfortable with and they're comfortable with, or they request it, that's certainly always appropriate.
I may add to that. I used to take these books. I recommend these books. I ordered these books for us.
They're on the table.
Yeah, there's some really nice little prayers, and I know that one of the women I used to go to, I'd ask her if she'd like me to read a prayer. And that was really nice, and we'd sit down and she would snuggle up right next to me, and I thought, probably she needed to have a physical contact. Because so many times older people don't have any physical contact. Nobody hugs them, nobody holds their hand, nobody, any of those kinds of things. And she would sit right next to me, and I would read the prayer. And I think that was very, very comforting for her.
So it's Marianne Williamson, former candidate for President William.
Yeah.
Marianne Williamson's book of prayers, and it's illustrated.
Yeah, and I like this, these Celtic Benedictions too. I first became aware of this by Paul Allen. Paul Allen gave this book to our son Paul when he was confirmed, I think. But anyway, that's what I read out of this morning. And these are beautiful, and they're short, simple little things, but they're beautifully written, and that the illustrations are all these Celtic drawings are just really fabulous stuff. I mean, that would be something you could even look at and talk about.
So all these materials are in a bin in the pastor's suite. So you walk into the suite, the newly painted pastor's suite, turn left toward the associate pastor's office. There's a bin on the right side of the wall with these books, with the Karen calling cards, which you can take to someone and leave. Maybe they may not remember that you were there and you would like them or their family members to know that you were there. You can use one of those cards. They can also be mailed. Those are all in that bin too. Also information about Go-Go Grandparent, the doctor is in those bins. And if I remember, when there are extra copies of a memorial service program, I'll put them in the bin too, because maybe the person you visit would like to just see the person's picture on the front of the memorial bulletin. They may have known them, and it's a sense of making that connection again from the church. Marianne, I know you need to leave. Thank you for being here.
Before you leave, I have one other comment. I'm thinking about, well, first of all, if you have family members that you become aware of, you think that might need some support, you would like to have an appointment with go-go grandparents, just have them give me a call.
You mean the
No.
doctor's in?
The doctor's in.
Yeah.
Yeah, that go-go grandparent, the doctor's in.
You can make appointments with go-go grandparents.
Yeah, you can do that too. But the other thing is, keep your eyes and ears open for parents or people who might need support for family members who have dementia. I might share with you my own personal story. I have a sister-in-law who has dementia, and my husband has just now been diagnosed with dementia. So I'm really very much aware of this and really, I'm really concerned about it. And I think there are a lot of other people in the community who also have this experience. So I would like to talk to Jeff about having a support, some kind of having somebody come in and provide some support to people, at least on a one-time basis. And maybe we might even develop a group for people to try to support to people who are dealing with these kinds of issues. I know I'm struggling a little bit myself, as I try to figure out what John can do and what he can't do and so on and so forth. And I know a lot of other people are probably having the same experience.
Everything. So some best practices. This is a little bit of a crash course review of care and calling training. We're calling this care and calling best practices. These are just some reminders. The reminders are good, I hope. Remember presence. It's hard to read what's on those little bubbles. Presence includes being present, what you stand for, how you show up, sort of the spirit you bring into the visit, how you connect to others, and how you communicate. This is a ministry of presence. In seminary, that's what I learned that pastoral care is always. First and foremost, it's being there. It's showing up in person, if possible, but being present. Saying, I love you enough, our congregation loves you enough, God loves you enough that I'm here. And you don't need to do much more than that. It's the first thing. Compassion, this is always about feelings, about your sense of heart-to-heart connection with another human being. And you might recall our conversation during care calling training about boundaries. Boundaries is the fences, not walls. Fences, not walls, that are necessary between us and care receivers, so that we don't completely throw ourselves into their lives inappropriately. And as Beth Chalupa was saying here many years ago, it's the other person. Let them own their own life situation. It's not our life situation. We are concerned about their life situation, but it's not ours. And when you do something for another person, you need to ask yourself, is this really for them? Or am I doing this for me because it will make me feel better? Always try to look at a situation from a care receiver's perspective about what's best for them and not whether it meets any of your needs for the visit.
And also not bringing your stuff into the situation.
Yeah.
Although, having said that, I certainly did that with that woman, but I think it worked out okay. I mean, I didn't mean to tell her that my mother had just died, but that would be a good example of, that could be a real no-no to bring in your own issues into this.
So there is mutuality, as Steve was saying. There's mutual benefit to these visits.
So you have to be really careful about it.
But you are the caregiver at the end of the day, the one who really needs to help kind of make sure that the focus is primarily on the other person. And even though they may try to bring you out, we're all pretty good at this, I think, try to bring it back to them. Because that's the gift that you're bringing to them that day. So also remember, this is a ministry of listening. When in doubt, don't speak unless spoken through. That's what the Quakers say. Don't speak unless spoken through. I mean, speak only when you have something really compelling to say. only ministers would learn how to do that. Really great. And confidentiality is always a part of this ministry. If, however, you hear of something involves the real possibility of imminent harm, or the reality of harm, self-harm, or harm within the household of this person, or harm by a caregiver, professional caregiver to the individual, anything like that, see Carol or me, and we will consult with you as to the best next steps.
It can be physical harm or could be financial
Right.
harm or
Any kind of abuse.
anything that you think you're really concerned about.
Because just when you think something like that isn't going to happen to anybody we know, it can happen to anybody. So otherwise, confidentiality is always an important rule of thumb. So please, 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 please report back to Carol and me. Every kind of contact you have, and some of you have such frequent contacts with your care receivers, you don't need to maybe call us every time you have one, but you might kind of bunch them together and then let us know, every few weeks or something, when you've seen the person, how you're finding them, any concerns, questions you're having about yourself as you visit them, or about the individual or their family.
Or if you get overwhelmed and you feel like you can't continue doing care and calling, or continue, or something with that relationship that you think is not working, then let us know, because we can switch.
Yeah.
We can make a change.
So I don't know.
Don't feel badly about that.
I don't know if you know, Carol and I try to meet every month. When we meet, it's about an hour and a half.
We go through every contact, all the relationships.
And we look at who's available in care and calling for ministry. And we also hope to get some more care and calling ministers when we can have a training again, in-person training.
And take a look at new people that
Yeah.
have come out.
Right. The contacts to Carol and me can be through email, phone call, any way that you want to make them. And we always, if it comes to me, I always share it with Carol and vice versa. We work elbow to elbow on this ministry. And thank you, by the way.
Well, thank you.
It's
a
fun.
joy.
It is fun.
We're having a good time.
Safety, good hygiene. We know a lot more about good hygiene today than we knew a couple of years ago. It's still good practice. Any COVID related advice, suggestions people want to share? I always call facilities ahead of time. I say, okay, are you open today? But kind of day to day at some of these places, if they've had an outbreak or not.
Yeah, it can change just on a dime.
Yeah. We do advise our caregivers to be vaccinated. We hope our care receivers have been vaccinated, but it's probably not appropriate for us to find out about that. And that's,
Most of them are.
well, yeah, I hope so. Do consult with Carol or me if you're in a situation where you feel like you just don't know what to make of it or what to do about it. We're here for you. As Neva was saying, the rule of thumb about visits is 4 times a year. By visits, we mean phone calls, emails, person-to-person visits, whatever a visit might be. At least 4 times a year. Some of you enjoy visiting a lot more frequently than that. Great. And remember the care and calling cards, they don't look like that. They look like the ones on the table. By the way, one of them is a facsimile of a painting that Carol made. And it's this. This is painting Carol made that actually has spiritual meaning that you shared with us once. The other one is a photo, beautiful photo by Lake Michigan that Waldeck Zelkowski took. And this was before we rebranded at the church with our new brand. So we're going to use up the old cards before we get new ones.
Can we take some of those?
Take all that you want.
Okay, good.
And there's matching envelopes. They are different sizes, so there's 2 sizes of envelopes. And these are the ones that are in the bin in the pastor's suite. Anytime. I don't even need to be here. Please read the prayer list each week because your care receiver could be there. And I may not have thought to pick up the phone and call you and tell you that. That happened just this morning. A care and calling minister who's not here was passing through the building. And I realized I had told him that his care and calling receiver was in the hospital recently. And I'm just hoping that you all are paying attention to the prayer list in case I forget to call you in that case.
You don't have anything to do.
No, I don't have anything to do.
Poor Jeffrey's been overwhelmed this summer.
The poinsettia party is happening. It will be in the building this year, as it has been in 2018 and 19. 2020, we just sent out cards. We didn't have real poinsettias, you may remember. This year, we've got cards and real poinsettias, and it'll be after worship on the 12th. And it will probably be in the neo-narthex because we're not having refreshments or coffee hours, receptions, luncheons in the church right now. So we, in 18 and 19, we had it in Tolman, you may remember, and we had the cookies and refreshments there at that same time. It's always the Sunday of pageant day, so get more people. This year, it'll probably be in the neo-narthex, because if it's in the narthex, I think that would not be healthy for the plants. There's not a lot of room in the narthex, so I think we'll just really encourage anybody in worship that day. You don't have to be a care and calling minister to pass through the neo-narthex, maybe on the way to the parking lot, and pick up a plant to deliver. Any of you want to come help on Saturday the 11th at 10 o'clock? We'll be tagging each plant, we'll be tagging each card, and then I'll be putting the cards out after worship on the 28th and December 5th for anybody to sign. We have about 80 plants coming. Cover everybody on the care list, and if anybody just wants to pick up a plant, we'll take it to the neighbor. So thank you for being here today. Have you any suggestions, questions, comments, including people at home?
Do.
It's obviously a good ministry.
Everybody's
You know,
doing
I
a
mean, I
fabulous job.
It's
We
important.
all enjoy doing it, and
Yeah.
certainly the ones that we contact, I know the people I speak with are just always so grateful, so glad to have a conversation.
It's amazing, we're serving almost 75 people. And then all the phone calls that we made, it's just, and then the meals, the Mary organizers.
And Nancy, I see you've raised your hand.
I just wondered if you wanted to take this opportunity to talk about anyone who might be alone on Thanksgiving, Christmas Day.
Thank you. So I actually know someone who might be alone, a member of our church. And if any of you, thank you, Nancy, for bringing that up. If any of you can think of a way how she might be invited to a table on Thanksgiving, which is next week, do see Carol or me. Carol will tell you about it in a moment. Thank you, Nancy, for bringing that up. We want to make sure that everybody feels loved through the holiday season. Any other questions, comments? Thank you so much, all of you, for being here. Yes, Nancy?
I just wanted to say hi to Verna. I think we met. Do you have a teal blue purse?
So, Verna, I muted you. Let me see if I can unmute you.
Oh,
She might not still be there.
I think she's there, but I muted her. And it's saying all I can do is ask to unmute.
At any rate, Verna, if indeed you have a teal blue purse, I think we met one day after church, and so welcome to our group.
Yeah, Verna, if you're trying to talk, I'm sorry, I muted you and I don't know how to unmute you. You're a bad pastor. Thank you all. Peace and joy to you. Happy Thanksgiving. See you soon.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody at home. Thanks for joining us today.
Very well put together.
Bye.
Bye.